Hello and welcome to the CX Files podcast for March 14th, 2024. My name is Mark Hillary and I'm in Sao Paulo, Brazil.
And I'm Peter Ryan in Montreal, Quebec, back on terra firma after a 10-day, the second European CX tour, Mark, that took me to Berlin, to Prague, as well as to the British Isles. So great to be back in Canada, coming to you today to chat about an interview you did with a mutual friend of ours, and I'm sure a friend to many who listen to this pod.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I was just looking on LinkedIn as I was getting some notes together on Matt and his company, and I found that we have about 250 mutual connections. So, clearly there's a lot of people he knows that we know in the industry. And of course, we're talking about Matt Kendall, who is the founder of Cognitive Copy. He's based in Madrid. And Matt has recently launched a newsletter service called BPO Bullhorn that is collecting together news and information on CX and BPO and kind of packaging together the best of and the most important news that you need to be aware of and sending it out by email once a week on Thursdays. So the same day that this podcast comes out, I've already started following the BPO Bullhorn. And Matt has featured myself as one of his guest curators, pulling together some news from the industry. And I don't think he's doing it every week, but certainly it seems that he's kind of getting a guest curator as often as possible to sort of add to the mix. Have you started following this already, Peter?
I have. I am very, very pleased to have started following the BPO Bullhorn. And if I'm honest with you, I think it's something that's been overdue in our sector for a while. Matt's somebody with a journalism background, also somebody who's an incredible writer. I've worked with him, collaborated with him on a number of different projects, and he's got a very good nose for what's going on in our space. The fact that he's bringing in guest editors like yourself, I think only adds to the value. It kind of reminds me of back when I lived in the UK, and every now and again, The Guardian or The Independent would bring in celebrity guest editors such as Bono or Richard Branson. So, Mark, you're in very storied company.
Well, certainly, if I'm competing with Bono, then maybe I need to head off to Las Vegas for residency.
Hey, dare to dream.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that one of the things when Matt launched this, which was about a month or so ago, initially I said to him, I really don't need any more emails. I just get too much email anyway for business, and every company wants to send me updates on what they're up to. So I was a bit reticent to sort of sign up for something else, but I did put my name down for it because Matt convinced me that it was actually going to be useful. And then clearly when I saw that what he's doing, it is a hand curated set of news stories and information about the industry that actually is really useful. So I think that he's definitely onto something here.
He is, and the response that he's been getting so far, and the chatter around the industry about what he's doing has been nothing but positive. Again, I think that the opportunity to share information, to share news stories, to share insight doesn't have a downside. This is really good. And as I say, with somebody like Matt, who's able to sniff out a good story versus one that perhaps might be a little bit more suspect, he's able to provide a tremendous service to anybody looking to try and get the information or the insight that they need on what's a very, very rapidly shifting and evolving state of the outsourcing space.
Yeah, well, and of course he did his apprenticeship on Nearshore Americas, so probably
Yep.
couldn't find a better place to learn about how to write about CX stories.
I'm sure Kirk would agree with you 100% on that, but I would strongly endorse that as well. He cut his teeth at Nearshore Americas in terms of the outsourcing space, and he's picked the ball up, he's ran with it, and we couldn't be more delighted for him.
Okay, so why don't we go to my conversation with Matt Kendall from Cognitive Copy. Hi, Matt. It's great to get you on the pod. I don't think you've been on here as a guest before, but before we really kick off, why don't you start by telling us about Cognitive Copy, your organization, and how you ended up working in this area of CX?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Great to be back. Actually, this is my second time. I'm slightly offended you forgot, but I'll forgive you for now. um, so yeah, cognitive copy is it's my trading as name. So I do very similar work to you. I operate as a ghostwriter for the BPO and the CX and the IT outsourcing industry. But so it all came about from I was working in the UK. Obviously, you can tell I'm British born like yourself. I was fed up with the lack of opportunities in the UK and the terrible weather and the dark driving and traffic. So I just sold everything I owned and I moved to Mexico. I knew a friend who was living in Mexico City. So I, took a risk and decided I would go to Mexico and start by teaching English. And then while I was teaching English, I met some people over there and they worked within a B2B publishing company. And they were looking for native English speakers to just come on and transcribe some of the interviews that they were performing. So I started at the very bottom as a transcriber, and then they pushed me up to become a journalist, and then an editor, and then senior editor, and eventually I was leading one of the flagship projects there, the automotive book, which was we focused on the automotive industry in Mexico, and we were talking to government officials, executives throughout the automotive industry, and even a few celebrities. We had a few Formula One drivers interviewed for the book. That was fun. So that was very serendipitous, really, just moving to Mexico and getting that opportunity out of nowhere. It made me feel like that maybe it was the right move, because I'd always been into writing. I'd always enjoyed English as my favorite subject in school. So that's how I moved into the field of writing, I guess, professionally. And then Kirk Laughlin, a great mentor of mine, found me on LinkedIn while I was working in Mexico, and he reached out and we had a chat, and he brought me on as his editor-in-chief for Nearshore Americas. And that was really my first taste of the outsourcing industry and the CX industry. So he took me under his wing, allowed me to learn everything I could about the sector. I did a lot of traveling around Latin America and the Caribbean and the US and Canada, and just got to meet so many great people like yourself, so many of these events, and learn about outsourcing. And then, so that's where I really kind of cut my teeth on the sector. But then, and the story's coming to an end. I know it's been pretty long, but it's coming to an end. So I decided to move to Spain as soon as Brexit happened. I was a little bit hurt that I was going to lose my EU residency and that freedom to live anywhere in the EU. So I hightailed it back to Spain, and I've been here ever since for around 5 years, and just ghostwriting under the brand name Cognitive Copy.
Nice. Yeah. And it's kind of similar to me. And maybe I should re-record the introduction there because I don't remember. I should probably check all the guests. But then, going back, I've been doing this for like nearly 7 years now. So yeah, apologies. but it's kind of similar to my background as well, because I never trained as a professional journalist either. It was I was in banking technology, and I had to help set up an office in India when everybody was moving all their technology over to India. And I wrote a book about the whole experience, and then people like the Financial Times gave it good reviews. So that was it was kind of enough for me to be convinced that maybe I should be a professional writer instead of a banker.
Right. You have to send me that book because now I need to read that.
Oh yeah. Well, actually, it's funny. It still sells, but it's completely out of date now. But it's good as a historical document of what was going on back then. So, talking of journalism, you've recently launched BPO Bullhorn, which I'm sure is going to be of interest to the CX Files listeners. But why did you launch this news service focused on CX and BPO, and who's the ideal audience for it?
Well, so what I discovered, or what I felt just constantly on social media, is that we spend so much time filtering through or scrolling through posts that don't really add any value to our lives. And occasionally you come across a gem, like a diamond in the rough, and you read it and it changes your perspective on things. And I, as a ghostwriter in this industry, I try to stay on top of BPO news and trends as much as possible, just to kind of guide my use of language and terminology whenever I'm writing for clients. But the more I look for that kind of content, the more I realize that a lot of the content was becoming quite stagnant, and it made it more and more difficult to find good, valuable content worth reading or listening to. And I just felt like I could be providing a service to people in the industry, providing some value by every time I find something that is genuine, valuable, something that people could actually apply to their business, something that affects the industry, something that, frankly, that people just would like to read, rather than the usual marketing spiel and press releases that don't really add anything to their lives. And I thought, well, if I compile this, if I can get a few of these links together every week and send those out to people in the industry, hopefully that's providing some kind of value to our audience. And so that audience, as you asked, is anyone with a career, really, or an interest in the BPO and CX industry. So that could be executive leaders, middle management, even agents. It could be contact center companies, analysts, researchers, anyone with a passing interest in the industry who's looking for valuable content, I would say.
Yeah. Well, and it comes out every Thursday, same as this podcast. And it's an email newsletter. And people have got different opinions on email. Personally, I hate email, and I'll do anything I can to avoid getting more of it. But if you talk to Peter, the co-host here, he's kind of the opposite. He wants everything to come through email, and he kind of gets overwhelmed with WhatsApp messages. So people have got different ways of working and communicating. So have you had any feedback on what people are thinking about the format at the moment then?
Yeah, that is true. It's so far people have loved it, though. We've had a lot of positive feedback. We've only had one person has unsubscribed since we launched, which to me is the only feedback I need. As long as people are sticking around, then to me that shows it's positive. We've already had hundreds of people sign up in the first few weeks. We're generally getting several new subs every day. So I think there is an audience, there is a want for this type of service. And again, just to the point, I think a lot of people are just too busy to scroll through social media, and they're hoping to find something valuable, and maybe they scroll for 30 minutes and don't find anything that they wanted to see or read. So delivering it directly to their inbox feels like something that they would enjoy, or something that would actually bring them value. And believe it or not, email is still quite a big channel for outreach, communications, marketing, and it seemed like a better fit than a social media newsletter, for example. For instance, I've got around 2,000 LinkedIn followers at the moment, which it's not huge, but the organic kind of, if I was to post on LinkedIn organically, the average across all industries is about 2%. So only, I can expect 40 people to see and engage with it out of 2,000. Yeah, if I've got 2,000 email subscribers instead of followers, then email has an open rate of approximately 25 to 40%. So that's a huge amount more visibility. But again, I'm not promoting my content. I'm trying to share content that is out there that people would enjoy. So
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
yeah,
I mean, I think that you're right about the social media channels are very difficult these days without sponsoring them, without paying for extra leverage and reach. I can see that myself on, I used Facebook for a long time. I have a group there that talks about, writing about technology. And I barely use it nowadays because unless you actually attach a promotion to a post, it doesn't go anywhere. I have about 11,000 people in my group, and I can put out a news story, and then I'll get 2 or 3 people liking it. So nobody is seeing that stuff anymore. So clearly there is something to be said about email. It does actually, if you know that if you send it to somebody, then it does go there.
yeah, and I think that just the very fact that people are kindly giving me their email address shows that they want something like that. Like they're double opting in. They're opting in to have this in their inbox. Whereas with social media, you don't know who wants to read what you're putting out at all. But so yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you were kind enough to feature me as one of your guest curators in the early days. And this is, on each newsletter, you have a special guest who contributes a few of the stories that are worth looking out for. What is the sort of value of getting someone external in to add some extra stories to the curation that you've already done? And are you still looking? I mean, is that a regular feature now?
Yeah, yeah, it is. I think we've had 3 guest curators already out of 5 emails. Like we're still in the very early days, so I must iterate. It's still an early experiment that we're iterating on and trying to improve. But the 3 curators we've had have been great, and just everyone's been finding different stories or sharing information that they found valuable in their careers that they want to pass on and pay it forward to the industry. So I think the value of getting these additional voices is, and this is something that's always struck me since joining the industry or learning about the industry, is that it is a kind of a niche industry, and it's filled with many intelligent and insightful human beings who know their stuff and have knowledge and insights that they want to share. And there's always been kind of this community spirit around that, I think. Well, that's my experience anyway, and especially going to events and you kind of seeing the same faces at all these events, and I like that community spirit about the BPO and CX industry, and also that the guest curation slot allows guests to really share content that just made them think, and if it's making experts think about something differently, then it's going to make executives and industry professionals think differently too. And also, selfishly, it's a good way to grow the newsletter's audience a little bit more quickly in these early days. But I do intend to keep that segment on. I think it's been pretty successful, and we've had a lot of engagement with it. So I will be continuing it, I think.
Yeah, and you mentioned the events there as well, and I think that actually this could be a useful thing to sort of include in real time at some more CX or BPO events, because you mentioned about seeing many of the same faces. Quite often I'll go to one of these events, and there's somebody that's standing there for half an hour talking about something, and you can look around the room and see that there's 30 or 40 people that have got just as much expertise. It often feels like they should tap into the expertise in the room rather than having PowerPoint sessions.
No, you could be right. And I think tapping into that expertise is, it's a good way to put it. And it's kind of the approach I'm trying to go with the guest curation slot, I think. Although we don't want to put any self-promotion in there. It's not a promotional, it's not a platform for marketing your own content or anything like that.
Yeah.
It's just a way to market yourself as an individual, as an expert, and really show that you do have a distinctive voice in the industry.
Okay, well, I mean, you've been writing about the industry for some time now, and commenting on what's going on, as well as what's happening now with BPO Bullhorn. You're following a lot of news. You're constantly looking at what's happening in the industry. You must see some themes or stories that are hyped or talked about too much? I mean, what do you think that in CX today we're all focused on too much and maybe should talk about a bit less?
It's a good question. It's difficult to advise advise companies what they should and shouldn't be talking about, but from my own perspective and my own position, I can see that AI related topics are present in 90% of the conversations right now, and I think rightly so. I'm not saying that they shouldn't be. It's got huge potential to transform so much about the industry and our daily lives in general. And I think this year is really, or the last few months and this year, people are really starting to realize that those who don't adopt AI will start to fall behind. I kind of see it like it's kind of like, are there enough lifeboats to go around, People feel like they have to rush to get in the lifeboats, but the way I see it, there are enough materials for everyone to actually build their own lifeboat. They just need to start building today to get on. And the challenge with that is that the tech is developing so fast that any conversation about the functionality of it, like say, for instance, an AI chatbot today, it could be irrelevant and out of date tomorrow. We saw with AI Sora coming out and just completely changing how video creation is going to be in the future.
Yeah.
We always have to look at this tech as the worst it's ever going to be. It's always going to be, it's always going to improve. We know that from previous technologies. We've seen smartphones are always a good example because they advance very rapidly too. But, this, I think, and I feel like there's kind of a correlation between the concept of digital transformation, which was a buzzword for a long time, a correlation between that and AI adoption, because it can seem kind of, to a lot of companies, it might seem overwhelming that they have to, digitally transform every aspect of the organization or the company, or they need to apply AI to every aspect of the company. A lot of the biggest benefits really come from kind of starting small and then scaling up over time. So I don't know, who knows, maybe by the time they fix a few of these kind of minor issues, AI might have gotten to a point where it can solve all the major ones anyway. So
yeah. No, I agree. And I think that one of the important points you just made there was about how it's only getting better. What we can already see today is the worst it can be. And because if you go back even just 2 years to before the launch of ChatGPT, then I think we were still talking about things like chatbots in a very different way to today. So there's a real acceptance that so much has changed in less than a year and a half. But we're sort of seeing a new announcement almost every week now. So that that it really is accelerating, and it seems impossible for anybody to not have some sort of plan to be prepared for change. Rather than no one needs to sort of throw their arms up in the air and say it's the end of the industry, because there's always a need to plan how brands interact with their customers. But at the same time, it's how is that managed and what technology is used to do it.
Yeah, and to your point about ChatGPT and talking about things in a different way, I think that I'm also seeing a huge problem in the overuse of generative AI, especially for marketing materials. Things like blog posts, landing pages, website copy, social media posts, even video scripts, all this stuff is, a lot of companies are starting to use Gen AI, ChatGPT, just to produce this type of content. And I fully understand that the speed in doing so and the efficiency of getting stuff out there quickly is very, very attractive. And marketers are starting to see the value of writing just a quick prompt and getting back enough text they can use, especially in other countries, in every country. But if you're trying to talk to an audience in a different language in a different market, it's a huge benefit. But however, there's a big but, because everybody is doing this right now. Companies are starting to lose any kind of distinctive voice that they might have, because everyone's starting to sound the same.
Yeah.
You only have to look at the first one or two sentences to know if it's been generated by AI now. And a lot of companies are putting out content that reads like that. And I think that it's, it feels like it's relatively new thing right now, but once the internet becomes polluted with this kind of content, everyone's going to be able to easily recognize it in a moment. And there's a danger there. And I think it's a good idea to, obviously I'm biased, I'm sure you are too, but I would say it is a good idea to work with a writer who actually understands what AI writing looks like and can make sure that yours doesn't look that way.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I ghost for a lot of different executives, and people have said to me, "Can't I just plug a question into Chat GPT and get it to churn out some content?" And of course, it's true to a certain extent. If all you want is give me 5 reasons why I should consider outsourcing to a CX partner, then it will churn out 500 words on why you should be using a BPO. And that might be good enough if all you need is SEO content. You can chuck it on your website. Maybe it helps a little bit, people finding what you're doing. But obviously, it's not going to be the same as like a ghosted piece of content that's talking about a New York Times story from yesterday that was critiquing the most recent results from Klarna. So, if you actually want to be able to talk in depth and with some reason and without just saying, here's 5 bullet points, it's almost like having a real depth of insight compared to the old listicles we used to see on BuzzFeed.
Yeah. No, that's a good comparison.
Yeah. Well, do you think that there's anything that the community is avoiding talking about then? I mean, you could say that AI is being talked about too much in many cases. But are there any sort of difficult subjects that you would like to see covered in more depth? That maybe some stuff that you're looking out for the newsletter?
Well, it's just an observation, really. Again, I'm not here to tell companies what they should or should not be writing about, but it does feel like there is a gap between what companies are communicating about their approach to CX and what customers actually want. I mean, if we can look at it from a perspective of digital CX and kind of the more human to human frontline CX, but on the digital side, websites, apps, things like that, all most customers want to do is avoid friction, avoid repeating themselves, and they want full transparency into their services, into their products, whatever it is they're trying to achieve. I'll give you a great example of great CX, digital CX, like the UK government website. I had to apply for a new passport here in Spain. I was expecting it to be the most horrendous thing I've ever done in my life, but it was the complete opposite. That at every single step of the journey of getting my passport from England delivered to Spain, there was a text message to update me on, like, they've printed it, they've put it in an envelope, they've sent it, it's on its way, it's 5 stops from your house. It was incredible, and I never thought I'd be saying that about the UK government, but they have the best CX I've ever experienced, I think.
Yeah.
Because I didn't have to speak to anyone. It was just, everything was just told to me, no problems. But just today I was trying to book a flight to the CX outsource event in May in Atlanta.
Yeah.
And I, using the Delta Airlines website, and I've got to say, I've got a long middle name. I have 3 names. I'm not going to tell you what they are because it's quite embarrassing. I'll tell you in secret one day. But my first name is quite long because it was my dad's idea of a joke. So I typed it into the Delta Airlines booking website page, and after my ticket was booked, it had cut off 3 letters of my third name. And it took me 30 minutes to find out from an agent eventually if my full name was actually on my ticket, because you know what it's like. You get there, they say your full name's not here, you can't fly.
Mm.
You know, and that's all that is just adding 3 extra characters to one field on a website, and it took
Yeah.
me as a customer 30 minutes of effort. So
Yeah.
that's the kind of digital experience that can be easily fixed and can prevent so much stress for a customer.
Yeah.
And then on the human side, I'm definitely seeing there's a lot more focus from BPOs on employee experience. I think that you know there's a lot of talk from the higher level about how they're improving employee experience, but something that you don't generally see as much is that kind of news from the employee perspective. I think the employees should have a voice in an organization's employee experience and how they're communicating it. I mean, you only have to look at, say, a Google Maps review for a BPO company, and I don't know about you, but I've never seen, I mean, I might not be looking hard enough, but you rarely see anything over 4 stars. And it's usually the office has a load of reviews from disgruntled employees who are kind of sounding off about the lack of flexibility, the lack of internal support, things like that. And yet the communication around employer experience is always very, very positive. So I think bringing all that together as we look at how AI is kind of likely to take over more roles on the agent side, there's a huge chance for the industry to really divert some of those cost savings over to employee experience and give employees what they want to enable them to provide better customer experience in the long run.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree entirely. I think that there's a strong thread that connects those topics actually, and that especially if you look at more high quality self-service, more interaction with AI. So if a big percentage of potential customer interactions are going to be more automated than they are now, then it's not just a sort of whole scale clearing out a lot of agents. It means that the agent's role itself actually changes, and it becomes a higher level expert type job. And surely that should be reflected in the way that they're treated and the way that they're remunerated, and even just the kind of status. There isn't much status associated with a contact center agent's role really at the moment. But if it really starts getting seen as a job that only experts in particular subjects can perform, then surely that will change.
Yeah, exactly. I fully agree. I mean, just going back to that Delta Airlines example, I can imagine if maybe someone who's working in the contact center can see this customer is clicking on loads of different links. Why? Let's let's ask them. Like, imagine that kind of proactive human experience. Hey, I see you may be struggling with something. Is there anything I can help with? That would have I would have never forgotten that, and I would have told that to everyone. Book with Delta, they're amazing.
Yeah. I mean, I had the similar kind of experience. Just it's funny because for years now we've used online booking, and I could never imagine kind of like going down the high street and walking in a physical agency and saying I need a flight to Atlanta for the CXO conference, but the actual kind of online booking experience these days is terrible. The airlines have just turned it into a price gouging operation where you get a price, but then you go to pay and they've added extra for something. There's some tax or something that wasn't declared earlier, and then there's the cost of having to select your seat, and they're charging you $100 for each seat selection, and and then you need to check the price if you're going to include checked baggage as well. It's a pretty awful experience. I found myself several times about to click on purchase and then going back. So it ends up sort of, you think it should be quick. I'm just going to do a quick booking.com or kayak selection, and you spend hours searching.
That is true, and I've seen, some BPOs are helping brands to improve that customer journey overall. I think there's a lot more consulting going on in that area. But I think that opportunity could be something that BPOs should double down on. Like, let's approach these brands. Let's find issues with their customer journeys. Let's approach them and say, look, you could be fixing this, this, and this, and this, and it will solve so many problems.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, well, let's wrap up. Just sort of looking to the future. Then, I mean, what do you think is coming next for specialist news and news within, say, a specialist area like the CX environment? I mean, do you think that we're going to be seeing more kind of creation the way that you're doing it? And I mean, we've been talking about AI a lot, but of course, why couldn't I just set up an AI bot to pick out all the latest CX news stories? I mean, what value am I getting from the human curation on top of that then?
This is something that I've been deliberating over for a while now, but I think that so this is a question that I can't answer myself. I don't think anyone can answer for sure. But let me ask you this. What do you think, Mark? If a human can recognize human content and it can pick, and I can pick by saying it, if I can pick out, say, human written content, human produced videos, human produced podcasts, and I can 100% tell for sure, and I can put that into a human produced newsletter, do you think that AI will be able to filter out what is human from what is AI eventually?
Yeah, maybe eventually, but I think that we're quite away from that still at the moment.
Yeah. So that's what I'm kind of counting on. I think that human created content will become more valuable and more sought after over time. People are always going to be looking for those human perspectives, especially as more and more AI content pollutes the web, as we mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
Again,
yeah.
Nobody can say for sure, but if you subscribe to BPO Bullhorn, with 100% authenticity that this is going to be human generated content curated by a human. And I think that for now, it's not hugely important, but I think that will eventually become kind of one of the attractive aspects of what we're doing with the newsletter.
Yeah, and it would seem that even in the mainstream media, the big brands, the New York Times, the BBC, etc., you would think that they should be making it part of their kind of USP now, that you can rely on their news and it's trusted, because we're now seeing so much fake stuff going out on social media, and so many people are just following social channels to get their news, that it would seem that the major media brands that have built up that trusted brand over decades or more should actually be playing on that a bit more.
Yeah, I agree. I just think that it's going to become harder and harder to recognize AI generated content, I think. So there'll probably be a need for some kind of authentication process to prove that this was not AI generated.
Yeah.
Rather than the other way. I think that the pendulum's going to shift and the majority of things are going to have some form of AI generation within them. So we'll need to be kind of like how art is authenticated, like this was original. This was human generated. No bots here.
Yeah. Well, the NFT craze didn't really last all that long in the art world, thankfully.
No, I mean, come on. If you can take a screenshot of an image, then why do you need to pay for ownership of that image? Really?
Yeah. Okay, Matt, that's great. Do you have a specific URL or anywhere that people can find out about BPO Bullhorn then?
I'm very glad you asked. Yes, we do have a landing page where you can subscribe. It takes 2 minutes, less than 2 minutes. It's cognitivecopy.com/newsletter.
Okay. All right, great. I'll put that on the show notes as well. So there should be a link if anybody looks at the the website version of the podcast, and also the notes that go out on Spotify and Apple, etc. Okay, it's great to talk to you. Thanks very much.
Well, thank you very much for having me, Mark. It's been a pleasure chatting as always.
Thanks for listening to the CX Files podcast. We really appreciate your feedback and suggestions. You can reach myself, Mark Hillary, or Peter Ryan via LinkedIn. Please also leave a rating or review on your favourite podcast provider, as that helps more people to find us. As always, we'd like to thank Chris Haig at Traction Media for the CX Files graphics. See you next week.